The KU football class of 2026 keeps on rolling. One of the best classes that KU has ever assembled in the 24/7 sports recruiting era. And Kevin Sullivan, a tight end from Rockhurst out of Missouri, is the latest entrant for the KU football team.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making us your first listen every day, anywhere you get your podcast and or on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show, including our bonus episodes where maybe you're doing double duty. Thank you to you. If they're passing a bill where you don't get, taxed on tips and working overtime, I don't know what that means for you for doing overtime for watching the show, but I think it should mean you should get money. If it was my choice, you would get money for watching the show. So thank you for tuning in any way that you get your podcasts. And Kevin Sullivan is the newest Jayhawk, or at least he's committing to the KU football team and will be a Jayhawk come 2026 with the football team. He's a 3-star tight end, somebody that I really like after watching his tape. We'll tell you all about where it puts KU in their class, their future tight end room, what he brings to the table, and more on this bonus episode of the show. Let's start here, though. Kevin Sullivan is a class of 2026 3-star tight end from Kansas City and Rockhurst High School. And obviously, he is now committed to Lance Leipold and the Kansas Jayhawks for that class of 2026. Good offers. The ones that were most, I think, notable in the end. He had offers from other schools as well, but Iowa State, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Arizona State, Arkansas. You end up with a ton of Division I, Power 5, or I guess Power 4 now. Well, is it Power 5? Pac-12's coming back together, right? Whatever. Power 5 offers for Sullivan throughout. And overall now he becomes the 17th commit in the class of 2026 for KU, a class that right now you could make the argument is the best class of the 24/7 sports recruiting era. Now, the 24/7 sports recruiting era only goes back to 2010. So, this doesn't take into account some of the years where you were bringing in, studs like Gale Sayers or some of the classes that maybe you were putting together in the 70s or in the early 90s or something like that, right? But if we're just talking about on paper, 17 commits for KU. This actually ties the most, if it finalizes that way, that the Lance Leipold staff has brought in a season at KU, right? They've bolstered it with the transfer portal, but you're looking at 12 commits in 22, 14 and 23, 17 and 24, 15 and 25, and 17 this year in 26. But what makes it the best isn't just the quantity, it's the quality of player. So if you go back to 2010, on the 24/7 sports composite, the most top 500 recruits that KU football has ever gotten in one class was 4 of them. That was in the class of 2010 under Turner Gill. That was 4 commits, or 4 players in the top 500, but it took 24 commits to do so. This year they have 4 out of 17 commits, so an even better percentage. You look at the top 1,000 commits. Right now, this would give Kansas 12 of their 17 commits being top 1,000 on the 24/7 sports composite. And right now, Sullivan doesn't even have a composite grade. He has a 24/7 grade, but not a composite grade. But he's Kansas right now, the most they've ever had top 1,000 commits since 2010 is 13. That was in 2011, Turner Gill era again. That was with 32 total commitments. So 12 of 17 is a much higher percentage. If we look at the percentage of recruits that are top 1,000 recruits on the 24/7 composite, the class of 2024 was about 53%. The class of 2025 was about 53%. This class is right now aiming at 70, 71%, somewhere in that range. If we look at the composite score as opposed to just ranking where you are, forget the top 1,000, we say a composite score of 0.8600 or higher. The highest that they have done since 2010 is 82% of the class. That was in 2024, was a 0.8600 or higher. Last year was the second best they'd ever done at 73%. In 2023 was the third best they'd ever done at 64%. Well, right now they're at 82.35%, the same exact percentage they were at in 2024 when that class finished 41st in the country and had some absolute studs at the top of it like DJ Warner and Dak Brinkley. So this is a very big deal, and they only add to it even more with another good commit in Kevin Sullivan. It gives them 2 commits from the state of Missouri, 2 of the top 13 there on 24/7. They also have 7 of the top 13 in Kansas, so really recruiting the local area well is Kansas. And for Sullivan. He becomes the second tight end commit in the class, joining Jack Utz, who is an 86 graded 3-star by 24/7, who's also from the state of Missouri. So I guess Kansas establishing a tight end pipeline in the state of Missouri. So what does Sullivan bring to the table? We get to that next. This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. And you can get in on the action for all sorts of sporting events, whether it's predicting who's going to win the World Series, who's going to win the upcoming college football or NFL season. You can look ahead to the British Open and place a future on that if you're into the golf thing. If you're new to FanDuel too, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. And again, thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode, and for you for listening to the show. All right, what does Kevin Sullivan bring to the table? 6'6", 220 pounds is his listing on 24/7 Sports, which has him as the number 10 player in the state of Missouri. It has him as the number 54 tight end nationally. It also grades him. I mentioned Utz was an 86 graded 3-star. He's right around there. 87 graded 3-star is Sullivan. Rivals also has him as a 5.6 rated 3-star. I don't think he has a rating on ESPN, which ESPN usually is a little slower to this sort of thing. And I don't know that he has one on at On3 either, which I don't know. Anyway, he also is a basketball player at Rockhurst, which I don't know if he'll play basketball this upcoming season or what, but I don't know. Maybe this is just a bias because you think back to some of the great tight ends who played basketball, like Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez and stuff, but like, I just feel like it behooves tight ends to play basketball to some level. I'm not saying they need to play it in college like Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez did, but like to some level, I do think it helps with, the boxing out and winning jump balls and some of the footwork and the quickness stuff. Like I think a lot of times that can almost cross train you in a real way. So I like the fact that he does that. And there's some fun highlights of him playing basketball too. He also, on the football team, he plays defensive end and he plays on special teams. So you really like to see that. And I think when you watch his highlights, when you watch him on tape, you see the athleticism. You see the fact that he's 6'6". I don't know that he's the fastest guy in the world. I'm not saying he's, prime Travis Kelce or, I don't know, Kyle Pitts or something like that, but he's a smooth athlete. Like the fact that you wouldn't necessarily know that he's 6'6" when he's running. Like he is smooth. He makes it look easy that he has that sort of frame. I like the aggressiveness that he shows when he plays and the power that he tries to play with. That's something that's only going to get better. I mean, obviously, he's going to be taller than a lot of the kids he's playing against in high school, but 220 pounds, he's not necessarily bigger, but he does not shy away from physicality at all. And that'll be something that I'd imagine when he gets in the Kansas strength and conditioning program with Matt Gildersleeve, right? You add, 10, 15, 20, 25 pounds to him. All of a sudden, now that physicality is coming with a little more punch, a little more pop, and that's going to be really fun to watch because you see that aggressiveness, that power, whether it's, run after catch, fighting for yards, whether it's his ability, and this is kind of a cross between his strong pass catching ability and I think his strength and toughness, but you'll see him a lot of times make a catch where he's about to get hit and he knows it and he takes a big hit and he holds on to the ball anyway. You love to see that for tight ends who are working over the middle of the field, but you also see that strength and power and willingness to want to get your hat dirty, so to speak, as a blocker. And he has the occasional really big hit, which is fun to watch from the blocking perspective. But again, strong pass catcher, seems to be somebody who can adjust to the ball in air, seemed like somebody who was able to adjust to the ball if it was thrown behind him, or like I said, made catches even through taking a hit. You like to see all of those things. I think you can even, in watching some of his like highlights where he's playing on defense, as a defensive end, seems to be a player who's very aware. There's a lot of highlights of him on the defensive end, like getting his hands up in passing lanes, knocking out a pass, or even getting an interception as a defensive end, which that tells you he is an aware football player. I think overall also shows the length, which makes sense because he's 6'6". And then I mentioned the special teams. There's a couple of highlights of him blocking kicks this past season. And that, again, shows more of that jump, length, athleticism sort of stuff, but it also shows, and it shows you, the physical and the want to, and to make an impact on special teams. And that's so important Because if you're looking to get on the field early and you're looking to make an impact as Kansas looks to continue to be better and better on special teams, those are things that can help your team win games, even if you're not the starting tight end, in 2026 or 2027, that you can still get on the field and make an impact in other ways. So how does he fit into the future tight end room? That next. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Again, you can find our show anywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube. Don't forget to make Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball your second listen every day. Okay, so Kansas lands a 3-star tight end in Kevin Sullivan. They now have 2 tight end commits in the class of 2026. You look at the tight end room for this year, the upcoming fall of 2025. Deshaun Hanukkah is a redshirt senior. So what does that mean? He's going to graduate at the end of the year. Bowden Groen, who is the transfer from Rice, he's a redshirt senior. What does that mean? He's going to graduate at the end of the year. Leighton Cure, he is a redshirt senior on his team on Kansas for the second straight year after coming in from Fort Hays State. He's a redshirt senior, so he's going to graduate too, right? So now, of the 6 tight ends KU has on the team, and I think 5 of them are on scholarship. Quentin Conley, I don't think, is on scholarship. Maybe he's earned one at this point in time. But Conley would be, come 2026, a redshirt senior. Jaden Ham would be a redshirt junior, and Carson Brune would be a redshirt sophomore at that point in time. And to this point in time, like Ham and Brune were both guys that were, Brune was like the last remnant of the Andy Kolnicki era in terms of recruiting him over, but he clearly had a plan for him. Ham was somebody that people, especially because he was a local commit, were very excited about what he could be and what he could turn into with KU. I don't know that we've gotten to hear a lot of those guys and their development and where they're at now. We'll probably find out a lot more about it come 2026 or maybe the lead up to 2026. But in looking at that tight end room, I think, it probably tells you, they're going to add somebody via the transfer portal who can come in and be a little bit more of a for sure thing right away to kind of buoy a group of players who maybe haven't hit the field as much. But I also look at that and go, okay, that does provide an opening for a guy like Kevin Sullivan or Jack Utz, your other tight end in the class, to come in and, maybe carve out a role in the early part of their career. It's tough for, I think, true freshman tight ends. I don't know that we talk about this position as much as being one that's tough to get on the field as we do with like offensive linemen. But it very much is, because the other part of the biggest reason I feel like offensive linemen don't get on the field as much early is it's the physical game. A lot of times they, especially at a school like Kansas, where you're not bringing in the kid who's already 6'6", 330 pounds and chiseled. You might be bringing in a kid who's 260 and you got to add 30 pounds to him or whatever it is, right? You got to get the body right. With tight end, yes, you want to add some of that weight and stuff, but what makes it difficult is that the tight end, like the quarterback, is involved in everything. They're involved in the passing game. They have to know all the route tree. They have to know all the passing concepts. They have to know all the run blocking and the pass the pass blocking concepts. They have to know the motion concepts, because they have to know everything like the quarterback. So that can make it a bigger adjustment. That I almost view this position, more like that, where it's like, okay, assume they're going to maybe redshirt in year 1, but I do really like what I saw from Kevin Sullivan, that I think he's going to be a stud down the line of Kansas. And when that impact comes, it kind of remains to be seen. Like I said, it can be more of a development with some of these tight ends, but if you told me he was getting on the field when he was a redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore or something, that would not surprise me at all. And I think he'll eventually be an impact player for KU. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you next time for another edition of LOJ.